Hello and welcome to the Blockade Runner podcast number 248. My name is John and joining me this morning is Ryan. What's up, Ryan?
Good morning. Hello.
Yeah, so we are back this week to discuss the Mandalorian Chapter 23, The Spies. This is the penultimate episode of Season 3 of The Mandalorian, so exciting times for sure. It's been a crazy week in Star Wars, a crazy week and a half or whatever because of Star Wars Celebration. I feel like, there's a lot of things firing here with Star Wars, a lot to look forward to, a lot of excitement from Star Wars Celebration. And then this episode dropped a few days after Celebration ended, and it was like a very exciting, very guns blazing kind of episode of The Mandalorian. So it's been a pretty crazy week or two in Star Wars, but yeah, we're also gearing up for a couple more kind of wild weeks, I think, because we have Jedi Survivor just on the horizon. Ryan, yeah. I'm planning on playing. I think you are too.
I am. Yeah, I took the day off work.
Whoa! And then just a few days after that, we have May 4th, which will bring us Star Wars Visions Season 2 or whatever that's called. And the High Republic Paw Patrol style show on Disney Plus as well, coming out on May 4th. I think that's all we know about. I think that's all we know about for May 4th, right?
Yeah.
Which is a good spread right there. There's probably not going to be much more than,
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Sometimes people, with like May 4th, when I say people, I mean me and other people, but me for sure, are like, oh my God, they're going to shadow drop like a new trilogy of Star Wars movies or something because it's May 4th, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, they literally never do that. It's always like a small thing. And then like a bunch of posts of like, hey, here's things to buy.
Right.
Buy
but I think it's
things.
Yes, yeah. And that's, totally.
The true spirit of May 4th is consumerism.
Sure. Well, yeah. But I think like giving us Star Wars Visions on that day or just timing the release of a new show or even a new episode of a show or something is like, that's fun and that's a good way to celebrate. And then there's always like other, I think like some Star Wars podcasts will do fun things on May 4th. And, there's licensees or just, I'm thinking like Bottleneck Gallery, for instance. They'll probably release some cool prints on that day, and you know what I mean. There's fun stuff that's like not straight from Lucasfilm, also, which I think is cool too. So it's exciting.
Yeah. And there is like some degree of celebrating the community, and stuff too. So it's not a completely hollow fake holiday. But I think like Visions is kind of the perfect sort of thing to drop on May 4th because it's like, hey, look at how Star Wars has inspired people from all over the world to create things.
Sure.
And we are supporting that. Like that feels like the perfect kind of May 4th treat.
Yeah, I agree. That's good. Absolutely. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So yeah, lots to look forward to in the coming weeks, but this week we're just going to focus on Chapter 23, The Spies. And I rewatched the episode this morning. I woke up Wednesday to watch it like I always do at 5 a.m. or whatever. And this is a longer episode. This one's like 55 minutes or something. Yeah. So I was like, whoa, I gotta adjust my morning routine and settle in for like a big episode. And it was, but I was telling you right before we started recording that it was like I barely remembered it. I don't know why. I think maybe just because there was so much going on in Star Wars in the last week or two, but I didn't remember it all that well. So I rewatched it this morning. I took a bunch of notes, so we'll just go through and kind of discuss it sort of chunk by chunk and get into it that way. Ryan, this one, I believe this episode and next week's episode are both directed by Rick Famuyiwa. Does that sound... I know this one was, but I think he's doing both parts of the kind of two final, or the both parts of the finale here, if you want to think of it that way, because after watching this episode, it does feel like the first part of a two-part season finale, I think.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I think this was like a great episode. And you know, apparently there's also, like, I think we should maybe address this as well. There's like this weird meta conversation about season 3 of The Mandalorian. How, like, in the past like few weeks, like, there's just this I don't know, just opinion that is that, like, this season's bad, and it's like and it's just like one of those things that people are just like stating as a fact. And even though, like, the episodes have been like kind of like disparate, but like they're telling the same story, and I like I don't think anything has been like overtly bad. Maybe the first episode was like pretty underwhelming, I would say, and redundant, but other than that, like, I don't know, there's like this weird conversation about how, like, this season is you know, they've lost the plot, they don't know what they're doing, they didn't plan anything, and now it's just a mess. And like, I don't know, like, I'm generally like pretty cool with most Star Wars criticism. I think, like, a lot of it is like, especially in the Disney era, is like deserved and stuff, but this has been like baffling to me. But then, like, after all of that, like, people are like, finally this show is good again after this episode. And it's like, what? It's like literally the same show following like the same plot threads from, like, you know, basically season 2. So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on this whole thing?
Yeah, I have thoughts on that. One is that I think this season is very good. I think it's very good, and I think people just a lot of times want to react in an oversized way. You know what I mean? So, like, I agree that there's plenty to criticize in anything, really. You know what I mean? Unless very few movies and TV shows or whatever are perfect. Very few movies or TV shows, you know, continue to, you know, produce new content or whatever and not have an occasional miss or, you know, whatever, right? And some episodes are better than others. Some movies are better than others. Like in the original trilogy, even the sacred text, right? Like some of those movies are better than other movies in that trilogy. And there's things that you can criticize in all of them, right? But so I think what I react to more, or what frustrates me more, is the exaggeration of the reactions, or like that kind of outsized reaction to it. So like, I think, you know, as you said, like a lot of the criticisms in the Disney era or whatever are valid, like for sure. But I think it's usually what frustrates me more is what people do with those criticisms. Because, you know, if you want to have a conversation and critique and discuss and analyze and, you know, look at the strengths and the weaknesses of something, I think that's great. You know, I feel like that. I hope that's what we do on this show. I think that's what we try to do, you know. But I think when, you know, you're waiting every Wednesday morning to be like, this was amazing or this sucked ass, you know, and that's like, you're ready to, like, I don't know, just exaggerate it and turn it into this culture war thing or whatever. It's just, I mean, not that people not liking season 3 is a culture war, you know, like we've seen actual culture wars in there.
Happening.
But I mean, it's just too much for me. That's what drives me crazy. So like, you know, so anyway, there's that. And then the other thing is, I guess for me, I miss when Twitter was good, because I enjoyed when Twitter was good, and I miss interacting with some of our friends on Twitter more than, or, you know, the way that we used to. I still use Twitter, but like, man, these days I just don't spend that much time on Twitter, and as a result, I just don't see that much of the negative. Like sometimes you tell me about this stuff, Ryan, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even really know that was going on, you know? And like, not gonna lie, that kind of feels kind of nice, you know? Like,
I bet.
Oh, I didn't even know people were freaking out about dumb stuff lately. You know what I mean? So, but I've seen some think pieces or whatever from some outlets and stuff. Like, I know that it has been a source of conversation. and I think I mentioned this the other day, I don't know, in our chat or whatever, but one thing that's been cool, just in my personal experience is that I've had, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 different people be like, oh, what do you think about the Mandalorian? Because that's a cross that I bear, and I'm sure you bear, and probably a lot of our listeners bear too, which is I feel like in a lot of my social circles, I am the Star Wars guy. You know what I mean? And so like when there's a Star Wars thing happening, like people want to know what I think about it, So I've had a lot of like, what do you think of season 3? Like, how are you, what do you think of it? And I'm like, it's good, And then every time the reaction from everyone I've talked to has been, yeah, I think it's really good too. Like, and so I guess those people have been seeing the negative reactions too, because they've kind of are coming to me being like, do you like season 3? Because I like it, but it seems like people don't.
Yeah.
Have you had that too?
Like to some degree at like different points, like people who like aren't watching or have like watched previous seasons, but like I know some people who wait until every episode of something is out before they sit down and watch it, kind of thing. And I've definitely had some people be like, yeah, I've heard mixed things about this one. Which I don't know, like the most, I think the thing that kind of really set me off was my arch nemesis user reviews being elevated above their station, because I shared with everyone this Hollywood Reporter article where the whole like crux of the article was like, yep, Mandalorian season 3 is bad and people hate it, and like the completely only citing user reviews and which like Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic user reviews, they are worthless, they are garbage. That it's where like people decide on Reddit to go be mad about something, and like 10,000 17-year-olds like go and like shitpost. Like it's, I don't know why those things still exist, and it's like seeing like the Hollywood Reporter citing those is like so like how far we've fallen. When I just checked this morning, and season 3 like critic reviews are still at like an 87%. Like it's still like fresh, and reviews are overwhelmingly positive. And so it's just like, it's so baffling to me that that stuff, and then you put something like that out there, and it like adds to this narrative of like, oh, I guess this thing is bad. And I don't know, like it's whatever, but I think like, yes, this season I think is naturally going to be divisive, though. I think it's kind of like going back to like I mean, probably like the impact point of all of this stuff would being like The Last Jedi, where it's like, yep, by the nature of the story being told in The Last Jedi, it is going to be divisive. And some people are, some Star Wars fans, like good people, are going to be like, yeah, I didn't like that direction they took with this story. Like, I can appreciate the craft of it, but like this plot, nope, this was not the way to go, kind of thing. And then like then you have like the user reviews from like racists and like misogynists and like all these like ridiculous people, and then it gets like conflated. And I think the nature.
But what are they mad about with this season? It's not like this season has gone more woke than previous ones or something, has it? I mean, like, what's so upsetting about season 3 of The Mandalorian?
So, I think there is a degree of subversion in this season with like who is the Mandalorian, because Din has kind of, I mean, he has taken a back seat to Bo-Katan's story, which is, I think, excellent, and it is like a logical progression from like the stories that were started in the Clone Wars series. But and you have some people be like, there's kind of like two sides to that. You have like people being like, nope, I wanted to watch a show about Din Djarin and Grogu. That's the show I wanted to watch. That's the show you sold me in season 1. But I mean, I would argue like by season 2, you probably should have known that was not really what this show was going to be. I would say, like, I don't think what's happening in season 3 comes as a big surprise. But sure, like, if like you wanted the Pedro Pascal and Baby Yoda show, like, I mean, it's not quite that. And like, it could even be less so that as we go on. And so I see like people being disappointed in that. But then then on like that other side, then you have like the culture war part of like, oh, now this show has a feminist agenda and like all that sort of stuff coming out. And
yeah, it sucks that Dave Filoni found a feminist agenda in 2023, huh? Like he's decided in 2023 it was, I guess he'd focus on female characters. What a betrayal, you know?
Yes. Yeah, Dave Filoni, you were the chosen one. You were supposed to. Yeah. So like it's ridiculous, and it has become like this like weird culture war thing again, as everything does.
But Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are gonna unseat Kathleen Kennedy as the president of Lucasfilm any day now, right? Like that's what this has all been leading up to. So, just
I'm sure there are still YouTube videos about that being dropped every week, especially now.
Yeah. You know what's wild to me though? Like the other thing about I would say this, and I don't mean like this is not a big deal to me to say this, but I think season 3 probably is my least favorite season of The Mandalorian so far. And that's not like a statement on the quality of it. It's like, oh, it's not good anymore or something. And it's not by much either. But I probably enjoyed the first 2 seasons a little more than this one so far. But, like, I cannot, like, fathom that people are like, oh, well, this show, like, I think you said like, the people are saying the show has lost the plot and they don't know what it's about or it doesn't have any focus or whatever. And I'm like, isn't it more focused than previous seasons, or at least as focused? I mean, like, to me, every subplot, every scene, every episode is exploring what does it mean to be part of whatever organization you're part of, and can people really change or not? Like, it's constant, even when you have droids throwing trash cans at each other and stuff, it's about like, can you be reprogrammed? Can you change? Or will you always be the same? It started in the very first episode with IG-11 and going back to that whole thing. Like, can you change, or will you revert to your old ways? And we're watching this story unfold about the Mandalorian culture and whether or not Bo-Katan can become the leader of this Mandalorian culture, whether or not the armorer change. She's suggesting now that she can, right? She's bringing in these other people and saying like, I have to compromise. I've got to be. So anyway, it's just like, I can't think of a character or a plot line or an episode that's not focused on those same ideas all the time, every episode, all season long. So for people to be like, oh, there's no focus, it doesn't know what it's doing, it's like, you're not watching the show. To me, I don't know what you're doing, but you're not watching season 3 of The Mandalorian.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with it, and that's why I think this might actually be my favorite season of the show. I think like that we still need to see if they stick the landing in the next episode. But for me, like, I definitely have some problems with some of the moment-to-moment writing. And even for this next episode that we're going to talk about, I have some issues with, like, delivery of certain things. And I think the first episode was pretty bad of the of the show, but for me, this feels like the most thematically rich season of the show for the reasons you were just talking about. And I'm always a fan of just entertainment that surprises me and that I can't, like, predict. That's just the kind of stuff that I lean into, especially with genre things where I've seen and read a million hours of Star Wars stuff. So I like being surprised and having my expectations subverted. And I think also, like, I went into this season with, like, rock bottom expectations, because to me everything seemed to be, like, leading towards, like, you have, you know, the biggest show on Disney Plus, like, now, you know, you have this huge mainstream audience. Now they're just going to, like, lean into that. Like, I felt season 2 got a little too fan servicey, and, like, you know, they're just going to lean into those tendencies. The show is going to try to please everyone, and, you know, that sort of thing. And it's been completely not that. Like, but it hasn't been, like, subversive in, like, an indulgent way either, or like an angry way. It's like those subversions are all feeding into this, like, larger story, and, like, the story, I think, is just the best it's been and the most, like, complex it's been. And you're just getting these payoffs every week of stuff from, you know, 2-3 years ago, and it's just continues to, like, pay off in, like, character arcs and themes. And yeah, I don't know, I have been, like, so pleasantly surprised by this season.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get into this episode, The Spies, Chapter 23. So the scene opens up with a Blade Runner-esque kind of vibe on Coruscant. I mean, Coruscant's always had the neon and that sort of thing, but, you know, as I was watching this, I was like, man, this is these streets are kind of like, there's that smoky fog on the streets and all the neon, and it just really felt very kind of noir there, you know, as Elia Kane is kind of creeping through this alley to talk to a massive probe droid. I guess it's an appropriately sized probe droid, but you didn't, you know, like, I don't know how many times we've seen people standing, like, right up next to them like that, you know?
Yeah.
So,
because they're usually like in contrast to, like, a spaceship, like a single person, like, speeder, or, you know, an A-wing or an X-wing or something.
Right, or even on Hoth, like, Chewie and Han shoot at that probe droid from, like, you know, a distance, and so it doesn't look as massive. Yeah, although I enjoyed seeing that probe droid in that scene because I had seen a video of, like, I guess there was, like, a probe droid race or something at Star Wars Celebration Europe. There was, like, they had a little track set up, and there was, like, a probe droid on, like, it was like a stand with wheels on it, and it was, like, remote controlled or whatever. Did you see that at all, or no? I saw that pop up, like, a lot of times. Like,
I did. Yeah, it was, like, going through, like, a maze type thing. Yeah.
So that was fun. But anyway, Elia Kane is in this alley to meet with, to have like a hollow meeting with Moff Gideon, you know. So they have the meeting, and I didn't actually write down what they talk about, but I think she's just there to say, like, those Mandalorians are up to no good, right? Is that what she's talking about there?
Yeah, I saw, like, a good a meme of this meeting that just had, like, this could have been an email comment on it.
Yeah.
Which felt like it. And this is, like, one of the things that was, like, a reoccurring thing that happened in this episode where I mentioned like I do have some like issues with the writing. Like there is just a lot of expository writing dialogue in this of like people explaining things like basically to the camera, where it's like would this actually happen? Like, would you actually be talking about this? And I think it's like even more egregious in the next scene with like the meeting of the Shadow Lords or whatever.
Shadow Council.
Shadow Council. But like even here, it's like you're just like recapping like what has happened on like this is just a previously on the Mandalorian thing here, like this whole meeting here.
Okay, yeah, I guess maybe the content of the discussion is, but it's also the big reveal of Moff Gideon, right? We hadn't seen him since season 2, so it's his first appearance there, and I think it's a pretty cool like 1-2 punch with this meeting in the alleyway with Elia Kane, and then he like basically flips off his iPhone camcorder or whatever, turns around and walks through this hallway, and I'm not really sure, like, talk about things that would this really happen? Would you really go from like, okay, I'm gonna have my I'm gonna do my Zoom call with Elia Kane, and then I'll turn around and I'll walk through a hallway with like the red force, or not force, but like the red barriers, you know, a la, you know, the generator fields on Theed and in the Phantom Menace, and I'll have like these dark troopers just lined up there. It was just very dramatic, you know, but which is ridiculous. But I thought it was cool. Like it was a good like, all right, Gideon is back and he's totally like the villain, twirling his mustache, walking through his cool triangle shaped hallway of dark troopers, you know.
Yeah, it's exactly what someone who wears a cape would do.
There you go. Okay,
like,
so he would do it. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, anyways, he walks from there to his Shadow Council meeting, and I love this. I love the Shadow Council. I thought it was so cool, and like just like,
I mean, it's happening there. A lot happening there.
Yeah. Okay, so some of the things that are happening there is we get to meet Brendel Hux, General Hux's dad. You know, he was there. You're wincing at the idea of seeing Hux. Why?
No, I'm not. I'm thinking
okay.
like that for me. Like it just reminded me of God, like almost like 10 years ago, like reading like Aftermath and stuff, and being like, whoa, like this is wow, this guy, huge dick. Like he sucks. Like, and I was just trying to like. It was also like, I don't know. It just all those like things from like these books that I read like a decade ago are like, oh yeah, like this guy used to act like this, and he did this, and like it's, you know, I don't think about really anyone in the Hux family on a regular basis, so it was just like, oh wow, like I need to like recall this stuff like really fast, and it's just like naturally happening. So it was cool. It was interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And then you know, basically the topic of this whole meeting is sort of like, what's the best way for, you know, we sort of like rogue or hidden Imperial leaders, like what's the best way for us to kind of push forward here with the Empire, and what kind of moves should we be making? And it seems like most of the Shadow Council is in agreement that Thrawn is our guy. He's the number one Empire dude now that Palpatine is gone, and so, you know, it's like we got to just prepare for his big return whenever that may be. And then Gideon's position, of course, is like, you know, I'm kind of sick of hearing about Thrawn's big return when he's not doing anything, and I don't see him anywhere, and like, I'm right here. You know what I mean? That seems to be his kind of approach to it, don't you think? Like, he doesn't seem to like the idea of Thrawn coming in and kind of taking over as leader of the Empire, and I feel like he wants Thrawn's spot.
I mean, maybe because there's like there's that stuff happening, but then there's also Project Necromancy.
Project Necromancer. Mm-hmm.
Project Necromancer. So and with Gideon's, experience with cloning and stuff, like I had kind of interpreted that as like Gideon was the one wanting to bring back Palpatine.
Well, I think they all do. I think like because Gideon's not the one who brings up Project Necromancer. I think somebody else does. And I feel like the conversation leads like from one topic to the next pretty logically here because the first part of the conversation is about Thrawn coming back. And that's when Gideon is like, that's a lot of talk that I've been hearing for a long time now. But like, maybe it's time to look to, I think he says something along the lines of like, maybe it's time we start looking to somebody else instead of, Thrawn or whatever. And I think he's definitely talking about himself. At that point, I think this happens before Project Necromancer is brought up. I'm not sure, but somebody calls Moff Gideon out and says, like, we know that you've been, like, trying to, like, basically, we know that you had Grogu and that you were trying to figure out, like, secrets of cloning or whatever and using Grogu and all that. We know that you've been up to that, and you didn't tell us about that at all, And then I think from there it goes to the topic of Project Necromancer. And my interpretation is that they were all on board. Like it was like, yeah, of course we're doing that, but that's not that's not yet. You know what I mean? Like Project Necromancer can't happen now, or it's like it's not something that's going to be finished now. I think that was my.
Okay.
So I don't think I think they're arguing about most things in the first part of the conversation. Like they're arguing about Thrawn and they're arguing about whether or not to give Gideon all the stuff he requested, because I think, to me anyways, they're like, well, you just want more power, but then he tells them, well, actually what I want is to squash the Mandalorians who could be a threat to us, and once he brings them up, then everybody kind of looks at each other and says, okay, yes, we will give you Praetorian Guards and we'll give you bombers and we'll give you all that stuff.
Yeah, I think like what reads weird to me, just like on a meta level, is like they're like, they're like Thrawn's coming, and then he's like, and Gideon's like, no way, and then like the audience is like, we just saw the back of his head in like this trailer for this other show, so like that I don't know, that feels a little weird. But
yeah, but if you read it from the perspective of like he views Thrawn as an enemy or Thrawn as a threat to his ascension, a la Kylo and Hux in the sequel trilogy, like, I don't know. I didn't read it as much as like I don't believe Thrawn's going to return. I thought it more like he had, like enough. It's been years and years of you guys being like, Thrawn's our guy. He's the one we believe in. We just have to wait till he comes back. I think Gideon's like, no, forget that guy. I can be the one who leads us, and I'm here right now. So let's do it. You know what I mean? I think he's to me, he's using this opportunity to be like, okay, the Mandalorians are a threat. I need resources. I'm going to squash them. And then I think if he does, he's going to turn around and look to the Shadow Council and say, look who led you to the promised land. Look who got rid of those Mandos. You know what I mean? Look who's been making moves and making things happen. I don't think he's going to be like, okay, now I will step back and have an equal place in the Shadow Council with all of you guys. You know what I mean? Or I'm just going to sit back and wait to like kneel to Thrawn. I don't think that seems to be like what Gideon's motivations are at this point.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's probably accurate. Yeah, there's just I think what's interesting about this scene, how like earlier I mentioned like that I figured that this show would try to please everyone, and I think it hasn't. Obviously, many people are very not pleased with this season. But I think like this scene in particular is just like really fascinating because I think it's like the first time that like sequel trilogy and EU stuff is like just completely intermeshed. Like you have you have the stuff that's going to happen in the sequel trilogy being alluded to, and then you also have like Heir to the Empire and like the Zahn books in there as well. And there used to be there was like a backlash immediately after the EU becoming Legends and the sequel trilogy coming, of like, oh, the sequel trilogy was always fighting like in uphill battle against people who had been reading the books and the comics and stuff for 30 years prior, because it was like, oh, this is what you're erasing the stories that I love for, the stuff that I read when I was 14 years old, and it's really important to me, like, and now like this imperfect trilogy of movies is what we're like, I had to like give up my canon books for, but now we're kind of like at a point where I don't know, like, it's pretty well done the way that they're like, why not both, and like kind of combining these things in a way that does feel pretty natural, and it doesn't feel jarring, because this is stuff that started a decade ago, like in Rebels, and and I don't know, like it just feels like really thoughtful, in like a bigger picture sense, and it's impressive. We'll see how like the actual story rolls out, but like it's pretty cool they were able to do that.
Yeah. And that's like, specifically what I thought was super compelling is the little nod, or the name drop of Project Necromancer. And that's one of those things where it's like, oh man, it's so intriguing, it's so compelling to me, but then actually execution of it is going to be tricky. Like, how much do you try to explain, how much do you leave kind of mysterious, because what works about it now to me is that it's kind of mysterious and campy, you know what I mean? And so yeah, kind of threading that needle of like, how much is the right amount to tell, how much is the right amount to keep kind of mysterious, and then also weaving in like this like EU stuff and sequel trilogy stuff, and trying to make it all kind of line up and work is going to be, I think it feels like it's something that is a major project here for like a lot of different Star Wars media over the next over the past couple of years, and I don't know how many more to go, but Bad Batch is toying with this stuff, and this show is toying with this stuff, and yeah, it's just, it'll be really interesting for sure. And of course, whenever Thrawn shows up, we'll see how that works too. But I think people are pretty happy with Thrawn's portrayal in Rebels, and I think people are happy with like the Thrawn books and stuff that have come out in the Disney era, I guess. I don't
8,000 pages.
Yeah.
I read one.
But,
of them.
Me too. Yeah, I think I read the first one in them.
Yeah. I think like I think you are okay with the Palpatine stuff in Rise of Skywalker. I would say like generally people are not so much across the board, and I think like even you who like that movie and like you're fine with that, like I don't think it's a highlight of that film and the sequel trilogy story to you. So maybe I think like it is what it is. Like you can't just like unmake that movie or pretend it doesn't exist or whatever. Like it happened, and so like maybe providing some new context to it will make it feel a little better for people. I don't know.
I think it's gonna be difficult. I mean, part of the reason I like it is because it's kind of stupid, and I think that's the reason most people don't like it, and that's fine. But like every time I see the somehow blank returned as like a meme or a joke or whatever, I'm like, I think everybody's laughing at that, saying it's stupid, and I'm like, I like it because it's stupid. You know what I mean? And so I think the only way I feel like kind of the only way it works, for me in the Rise of Skywalker is because of the kind of boldness of like the dead speak, you know what I mean? Like Palpatine's back, somehow he returned, like making it so campy and stupid or silly maybe is a better word than stupid, but like that's what I like about it. But I also think it's really cool. Like, okay, we've got Bad Batch kind of exploring like how did this happen, and we've got Snoke's Snoke's another thing. Snoke is because people like Snoke, but also like what the hell is the deal with Snoke? You know what I mean? I don't know. Like how Snoke? Why Snoke? You know what I mean? Like we don't actually know the answers to any of those questions either. And I feel like this stuff is going to try to kind of explain, that to a degree too. So, it's all going to be, I don't know. I think you have to find the right balance of mystery and information, and I think that's tough to find. But especially at the Palpatine part, because as you pointed out, like I feel like to win a lot of people, to win them over, it would have to be amazing. Otherwise, you're not going to win them over because they really dislike it. So
yep, and that's I think that's what's compelling about all this. Like I think the easiest thing for Lucasfilm to do would be to just like kind of like throw that movie under the bus, like they kind of continue to do with Solo consistently. Like it is funny that like Solo is like the whipping boy when it comes to like Lucasfilm. Like literally any mistake that like happens or things that people don't like, they're like, well, we've learned a lot from Solo. And it is just kind of like a funny reoccurring thing. But I think like the easiest thing would be just to like just move on. And I think that's kind of like where things were at with the prequels for a while. Like
I was just going to bring that up. Yeah.
When Lucasfilm or when Disney bought Lucasfilm, they're like, we are going to distance ourselves as far as we possibly can from the prequels. We're going to have J.J. Abrams out here talking about Jar Jar's bones in the desert. We're going to be like, Chewie, we're home. We're going to have all your old favorites back.
But that was so lame though. That was so lame.
It was. And then then over time, like then you have people being like, they like kind of like in like little bits, like a little bit of sequel trilogy starts kind of like peeking in, and like literally nothing from the sequel trilogy is mentioned in Force Awakens, like nothing.
The prequel trilogy.
Yeah. And then in Last Jedi, like you have, Luke Skywalker talking about Darth Sidious a little bit. And like that, I remember like that part in particular being like, holy shit. Like the first time I watched Last Jedi in the theater, like they are acknowledging the prequels on the screen in like the biggest movie happening. And then we continue to kind of get like these little things like a comic here and there, and and then people are like, yeah, I like that. And like I think the prequel fan base became more and more vocal, and people within Lucasfilm were being like, yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff here. And then you have like Dave Filoni, who's obviously like hugely fond of the prequels, and then you got like Jon Favreau being like in interviews like, yeah, I didn't think those movies were very good, but talking to Dave and rewatching them, like there's a lot here. You have Rian Johnson in interviews being like, yeah, these movies are really smart, actually. And then, then we get stuff like Obi-Wan. And people are like, yes, Hayden Christensen.
Yeah.
And then we get, Ahmed Best. And people are, like, losing their minds. And, like, all this stuff that was, like, hated, people are like, yes, I love this. We love this. Like, and it's just, like, this gradual thing over time. And I think that's probably the approach they're going to take to some of the, sticky issues with the sequel trilogy.
Yeah, but I don't think they are, because number one, they just announced a Rey movie, and number two, like, we just watch these guys sit around the table and be like, remember that Palpatine thing? Like, they're already talking about it. And it's only been a couple of years. Like, but
it's been a shorter amount of time, but they didn't like it.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
like right after Rise of Skywalker, they're like,
I got you.
What sequel trilogy? Like, Skywalker saga's over. This is the new era of Star Wars. And now I think we're at a point, like, I think it was, the right, like, this month was the right time to announce the Rey movie. And I honestly, it's sooner than I expected. So maybe it wasn't the right time, but, like, I'm glad it happened.
Yeah. Sooner than I expected too, because I think a lot of this is all generational also. You know what I mean? Because a big part of, I think, the prequel renaissance is not just Disney being like, well, let's cool off on the prequels for a while and then that'll make people love it. I mean, I think what you just said makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure that's part of the equation. And that helped, bring the prequels back or kind of gain some more esteem with people. But I think another part of it is just that, like, every generation, when it seems that, like, anyways, every generation, when the new thing comes out, they're ready to be, or not ready to be, but, like, the new thing is not going to be what the old thing was to them. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard for the new thing to impact you the way that the first one did, or whatever. And so, like, I think, long story short, there's a lot of people that grew up loving the prequels when people our age or older were like, these things suck. Like, what the hell? This is not what I wanted. Like, people who are younger were like, that is their Star Wars. They love it. And so now that they're older and have more of a seat at the table in terms of the discourse or whatever, I think that's another big part of it as well. And, they're not, like, these different eras and sets of movies are all different. Obviously, like, the prequels are not the same thing as the sequels. They're different movies. And so, like, of course, the conversation, the reaction, whatever is going to be different. But as somebody who loves a sequel trilogy, like, I feel like eventually we're going to have the same cycle as we did with the prequels. You know what I mean? Because like, the prequels have faults, you know what I mean? But now everybody loves them again, or a lot of people love them again. And I think, eventually, and this is, part of, or kind of, the same point you were making, but I think eventually that sequel renaissance is going to happen too. I don't know if it'll be in a couple of years when the new Rey movie comes out, or if it'll be 10 years from now, but I think, eventually, I hope anyways, they'll be reevaluated, or just, the people that loved him as kids are going to be, going through that same process that prequel kids went through, so. And also, I just wanted to throw out, like, I like George Lucas's approach too, because Disney was like, and I don't, it only makes sense, but Disney was like, all right, maybe, like, right now the prequel stuff is not hitting, so let's avoid that for a little bit. George was like, people, told him he ruined their childhood and everything. And then, like, 2 years later, he was like, let's do a whole TV show about the Clone Wars. You know what I mean? He didn't, like, exit the prequel era. He like dug in deeper, which, is that's just the George Lucas way though. Right. So,
yeah.
All right. As this scene ends though, Ryan, I thought this was interesting. As this scene ends, Moff Gideon says, "Long live the Empire." And then everybody in the Shadow Council all exclaims together, "Long live the Empire." And I was like, man, this is like the evil version of This Is the Way. It's like the parallel there. They have their own This Is the Way. And again, like we were talking about earlier, this season having a focus, right? I just think, like, that moment it's kind of hokey. I don't know if that would happen or if you would include that in the scene, if not for the parallels to, hey, they have their own doctrine, just like the Mandalorians have their doctrine, and part of what the show is exploring this season is those doctrines and how people maintain them or potentially change them or, whatever. So I thought that was thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think just these like Empire holdovers, like, you know, you at first, like the way I kind of saw like thinking back to like Mando season 1, the way I kind of saw these you know, these regional moffs or whatever who are like still, you know, still full on Empire, even though like the war is over and they lost, was just kind of like, oh, like you're just like neo-Nazis. You're just like shitty people with shitty beliefs that you will never change, and so you're just sticking with this branding because it's like the most hideous thing imaginable. And but it is kind of weird now after you know, after things that have happened in you know, this season of Mando, that the seeing kind of like the flaws in the New Republic, and then you can kind of like see these people being like, look how bad things are now that the Empire isn't in control. Like, look how they have, like, they won the war, and then they have completely botched this. Like, there's no order, like, and, like, obviously they are, you know, exaggerating it. Like, it's, you know, it's the same as people being like, you know, now that Joe Biden's president, like, crime rates in cities are out of control, like, all this stuff, and you know, like, we need to go back to like my team, and but like now that is kind of part of you know, the conversation, and then like even in like a less you know, in more of like a thematic way, like it's the same things saw in like Andor, of just like best intentions, imperfect systems for governing, and like it you know, it kind of recontextualizes the villains in a way, and I think that is pretty interesting, because before it's just like, why would you still be an Imperial like at this point, like and then, but yeah, from the stuff we've seen in Mando's season 3 and other parts of Star Wars, you know, you can kind of like, obviously they are still like in the wrong. Like, yes, the New Republic is flawed, and like we know that, but like, you know, and yes, like the Jedi Order is flawed, and we know that, but like, you know, also like just being like pure evil space Nazis, like that's like way more wrong. Like that's definitely the more wrong of these like two flawed things. But it is like, I don't know, it does kind of change the way I'm viewing them in a way.
Well, I think it's also part of the theme this season is exploring too, though, is like some people are true believers and other people are not. You know what I mean? Like some people get swept up into things. Some people are zealots, and some people are maybe along for the ride, but not necessarily the true believers or whatever. And I think it's really interesting when you think about Din Djarin, because like the Armorer, at least until recently, because like the Armorer recently has been like, okay, you know, I have it written down here because we're not there yet, but like we're getting there soon. The next scene, actually, let's go to the next scene. The next scene, or next kind of section of the episode, is on Navarro, because Bo-Katan and Din Djarin bring back Axe Woves and Casca Reeves and their whole crew of Mandalorians, and their whole, you know, all their ships and all that, right? And when they land, there's this kind of standoff, right? And they take their helmets off, you know, the ones that are with Bo, I mean, the ones that she brought back, and they take their helmets off, and like you can tell like this could get bad. Like these two sides are not sure what to think of each other. And then the armor says, "Welcome, fellow Mandalorians. You know, we're gonna have a feast for you, or whatever. Like let's all come together." And it's just like, you know, she has been the one who's more like a zealot, right? Like it has to be the way, like our way is the way, helmets on, you know. And Din, obviously, like that's what he's been taught, that's what he's been brought up with, but like when push came to shove, when it mattered, he chose to do, you know, what he needed to do or what was the right thing to do, and buck that creed, or at least kind of, you know, bend the rules a little bit of the creed, or, you know, whatever it is. So yeah, I guess I think with the Empire, we're seeing like some of these characters obviously were in the Empire, they were serving the Empire, they maybe believed in it to an extent, but like once somebody kind of opened their eyes, or once they were able to kind of look at it from a different perspective, they were willing to kind of, you know, think about it as an individual and make a different choice. And obviously we've already seen that with Din. I don't know what we're going to see with the armor. I think we're seeing, you know, at least right now, she is toying with that, and you know, she hasn't taken her own helmet off. She hasn't told the rest of the people in the Children of the Watch that they should change their creed or change their beliefs, but she's at least accepting people who have, you know, other beliefs. And so, yeah, I guess to me that's like, you know, where I would go with this Empire thing, is that, you know, we saw Jack Black's character last week, right? Like, he was serving the Empire, but I think as far as I read that character as well meaning, and, you know, once he woke up to like what he had been a part of, he didn't want to be a part of it anymore, you know? And then you have Elia Kane, who is just going to pretend that this is the case, but she is a true believer. You know what I mean? She is in it for the long haul. And so you have various, you know, kind of characters, or various places on the spectrum for these characters. But yeah, I mean, that's even a sequel trilogy thing too, right? With Finn and other stormtroopers. It's like, yeah, not all of these people are going to be complete zealots, evil to the core, you know. And that's one of the things that this season is exploring for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're on Navarro. They show up. The armorer says, "Welcome, Mandalorians." Grief Karga gives Din some expensive space whiskey, which is cool. But then he's like, "You know what? That's not all I've got for you, Din. That's not all I've got for you."
And here we go.
So they go back to High Magistrate Grief Karga's office, and he presents Grief with IG-12, who has been customized by the Anzellans. And here's the thing, Ryan. This is really interesting, too. Now, the driver provides cognition, is what Grief Karga says, right? So it's like IG-12, IG-11, whatever you want to call him, like he doesn't even make his own choices. He's not even... There's no CPU in there. You know what I mean? What does Arnold say in Terminator 2? It's a neural network processor or whatever. He doesn't have that. You know what I mean? He's just and in fact, Grief Karga says, you know, think of it more as a vehicle, you know? So basically, Grogu gets his first car in this episode, you know?
He gets his first Gundam.
His first Gundam, yeah. This is wild stuff.
Yeah.
I was curious what you would think about it.
I mean, shout out to ILM for making the most ridiculous things come true. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. Completely. Totally absurd. It serves no practical function. Like, why would you even want, like, this boss baby piloting a mech? Like, what is the point of this? That said, it is, for one, it's just cool. Like, it's cool. Like, so that's really the only reason you need to put something in Star Wars is it cool? Put it in. Like, is it cool and interesting? Yep. So it checks that box. But then I would say it, like, goes beyond. And, like, yeah, it's a way for, like, IG-11's legacy to, you know, live on. I don't know if we needed that, really. But cool. And then, but I think more importantly, it is, Grogu's first way of communicating. And I think that is the purpose it serves in the story. It's like when you get your baby their first talkie, or whatever, so that they can have like their very first like simple attempts at conversation. And then it also leads to some ridiculous and funny moments as well. So like
yeah, it's so funny. It's really silly. I guess I'll take what comes. We'll see what comes, but I feel like Grogu should be cruising around in IG-12 in these 2 episodes, and that should be about it. I hope it's not his new, primary method of transportation and locomotion and all that. I don't think he should be Krang forever.
They could probably do with it though.
Yeah. We'll see.
He's just been in that space stroller for a while, so.
Yeah, I like the purity of just seeing him floating around in that thing, kind of though. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Though.
You're right. Which means he's not going to fit in that thing forever, though. That's another thing.
I mean, we'll see how much bigger.
But he could probably get a.
I don't think he's going to have a growth spurt.
But I don't think Yoda would fit in that. Yoda wouldn't fit in that thing.
Yeah, but
they really shove Grogu in.
Yeah, but also like he's probably like it's probably going to take him like 100 years to like grow to Yoda's size.
Well, yeah, right. Yeah, that's true. So yeah, the Anzellans continue to be fantastic. He like slides down IG-12's arm to get out of there, and as he's walking by Grogu on the table, he's like, "Bad baby, you're crazy," or whatever.
that was pretty funny. Yeah,
that was good. And then Grogu's just the use of the no, yes, no, like all the buttons was fantastic. And then we even have Grogu at the fruit stand. Like. He was going buck on that like little container, that bento box of food or whatever. He was like, I've never seen him go that. Like he was like, Anyway, Dan's like, this is not working for me. And he's the protective parent, I guess. He was just like, we don't have to. Let's not do this. And Grief Karga's the one pushing to make it happen. So anyway, I thought it was really fun and funny, and I can't wait to watch it. I still haven't watched it with Elliot, my younger son, but I think he's gonna probably really go nuts for it. And I would imagine kids love that scene, and kids obviously love Grogu, and I bet that's a real highlight for them. So
yeah, I think also like this also is something that I think like it exists, but it's not something that's been like top of mind for me in the way like it used to be. But this is Star Wars at its most toyetic. Like this is definitely going to be at minimum a Black Series figure, and then I would say beyond that, I think there'll probably be quite a bit of merch and kids toys of this, which I hope so. Like that would make me very happy to see this like as a affordable, safe, durable toy for kids. Like I'm sure it'll be like a $75 figure statue for adults, but like they need to get like $15 versions of this like on Target shelves for kids to play with, because like this is like the ultimate like kids toy. And
one would assume some great cosplay at Star Wars Celebration Japan as well. You know what I mean? If not good Halloween costumes too. So
yeah. Because I mean, it's like it's Krang, like
it's
basically,
Krang.
And like that was such like that was such a huge design for us when we were kids. Like we love that.
Yeah.
And so I would definitely like to see more of this happening.
Yeah. So from there, at the big feast, nighttime, they're all sitting on their boxes, eating their big hunks of meat and stuff, and Bo-Katan gives the inspirational speech where she's like, it's time we retake Mandalore, and she says, I need volunteers from both tribes. And Din volunteers himself and Grogu right away. And then from there, like, you start to get some of the more recognizable Mandalorians volunteering to go along. So Axe and Casca Reeves and Paz Vizsla. And then the armor volunteers to go as well. Yeah. And that was an interesting moment because the armor says, I will go as well. And then Bo-Katan does this like look. She does this like nod at her. You know, they really held that nod. And I was like, this is interesting, you know, this whole thing. Like the dynamic between those two is just very compelling.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I mean, right now it seems like the dynamic is that the armor is falling in line behind Bo-Katan and, you know, being willing to be I don't want to say a subject of Bo-Katan, but like, you know, Bo-Katan is her leader, you know, is how she's acting right now. So we'll see if that continues to be the case, but it's that's how things are going so far.
Yeah, it feels more like an advisor to role, because she's also been like providing Bo-Katan with a lot of like wisdom and inspiration and just like facts as well. So yeah, but
did you did you sense any tension in the moment, like later on in the episode where they come in? Well, the next thing that happens is they go to Mandalore. They start their scouting mission. Bo-Katan seems super pleased, by the way. She's got this big smile as they're starting to go off on this scouting mission to find the Forge and kind of resettle Mandalore. But then this like Mad Max kind of pirate skiff like ship is on the horizon, and it's a group of night owls who never left Mandalore. And as soon as they see that it's Bo-Katan, they're like, we have failed you, but our blasters remain in your service, you know, and they join up with them. But later on, like after I guess the next thing that happens after that is there's this big monster, like sort of attack or whatever, out of nowhere. It was kind of I mean, they talked about how the planet, there was like dormant species that were emerging and there was dangers there and stuff. But anyway, some of the Mandos get hurt in that, and the armor says to Bo, like, I'm going to take them back to the fleet because they can't, you know, they need medical attention or whatever. And Bo-Katan's like, okay, agreed, you know, I agree or whatever. But I just felt like that was like the way the armor said it to her, like, this is what's happening, this is what we're doing. And Bo-Katan was like, yeah, okay, I agree with that. But I felt like there was a little bit of like, who's in charge here kind of thing going on.
I don't know about that. I think it was more like Bo-Katan, just like her, you know, mentality is like, we all just push through whatever, and we just keep moving forward, and, you know, we keep fighting kind of thing. And then like the armor is like, wait a second, like these people are like need medical assistance, and Bo-Katan's like, yeah, you're right. Like, is just how I read that.
Okay.
But
okay.
I mean,
well, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think some tension is probably inevitable.
Well, and the way the scene is acted and directed and whatever, I feel like it's subtle enough that it could be there, or, you know, it might not be. It's not like super obvious, but I just sense like a little something going on there, you know, but I might be looking for it too, because I don't know how much I necessarily trust the armor long term, you know. I don't know. I doubt like they're going to go from she was so invested and so dedicated to this way, and, you know, her being like, all those other Mandalorians are a bunch of phonies, like, you know, it's been a really quick 180 with her being like, oh no, you know, take your helmet off, Bo-Katan, like, welcome Mandalorians, like fellow Mandalorians. Like, she just went from those people are apostates to, yeah, like we're all on the same, like it was so quick that I think probably it'd be more interesting, and probably there's some material to be mined there with some conflict within her and, you know, between these groups. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, she's still in like the babyface turn mode right now, but I don't know. I think it is like continuing just with like the theme of this show, this season, Star Wars in general, of like recalibrating or not your belief systems.
Yeah, but the show is already on a smaller scale, giving us examples of people who are acting like they're recalibrating, but they're not.
Yeah, that's what I said. Like recalibrating or not. Like those are the stories that they're telling here. Like some people do, some people don't. Some people it's a really easy thing. Some people it's like more complex, and like people are going to change and waver within that, and Din has gone from like one side to another side back to the one side, and we like for the viewer, like at a lot of points like we were like, man, who even cares? Like what? Like just take your helmet off. Like who cares? And then we've been challenged to be like, well, no, he has his reasons to follow this belief structure, and like that's his character, like even though like maybe like we don't agree with it or whatever, but like he can also coexist with these people who don't have the same belief structures. And I don't know, I think it's like it's there still isn't like we talked a few months ago, like what is like the statement this show is going to make about all this stuff. And I think it's kind of, to me, I think it's like evolved into something different, where it's more just like an exploration of like these ideas than like them coming out in favor of or against any one type of belief structure, because it's being explored in so many different spaces. Like I don't know if there is like a clear conclusion you can come to after all this that would allow you to kind of like predict where the story is going.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I don't need the Children of the Watch to be like, we're going to take our helmets off now, we're going to change our beliefs. I think, though, that I need them, if they're going to be presented as like, I think I need them to be tolerant of people who don't. And so far, I mean, now they kind of are, but so far they haven't been. Like, I wear your helmet all the time. Never show your face if you want to. I don't care. But, when you shame the people who don't do that and try to kick them out because they don't do that, then I think that's not a defensible, to me anyways, that's not a defensible, belief system, right? And so like there's a lot of worldviews and sort of like belief systems and stuff out there that are there's a difference between zealotry, or a difference between like a belief system that shames and controls and manipulates, and one that could only be a few shades over, right? But it doesn't do those things. Like on the surface, or what you put out there could be a lot of the same beliefs, but I think there's versions, denominations, whatever, that really try to control and shame and manipulate, and then there's versions that don't. And to me, they need to come out, not the creators, the actual characters, I think, that are in this Children of the Watch or whatever, need to come out and at least be like, we're not going to force this on anyone, and we're not going to excommunicate you if you look at things differently than we do. If they don't do that, then to me they are overall a negative kind of group of people or whatever. Like I would not be cool with it personally.
Well, what I've seen is them being like, you can leave at any time. And then what I've seen in this episode in particular is the Night Owls, the traditional Mandalorians. We've got Axe Woves here, calling them primitive, or primates, or whatever the derogatory term.
No, he said primitives. Primitives.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think like they're actually not coming across great here.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I mean, right now, in the last 2 or 3 episodes, the Children of the Watch have been, very welcoming, right? So if that's the final statement about them, then that's great. But, what I also saw is that Din Djarin showed up on that space station in the Book of Boba Fett, and they're about ready to kill the dude because he was not, following their standards. And like this whole thing where you can leave anytime you want, I never heard anything about that until like 2 or 3 episodes ago. So again, I'm like, it's not like I hate the Children of the Watch or like, that they're, oh my God, I think they're evil and awful. But I don't want to ignore the previous seasons and the way they have been depicted until this point. I think what the jury is still out, to me anyways, on whether or not this current kind of perspective of theirs is permanent, and if it'll be an example of becoming more progressive and actually changing for the better, which is one of the things this season is exploring. If it's that, then I think that's awesome. But I'm not completely convinced it's that, because I still think there is going to be, or there is the potential for conflict between these different groups of Mandalorians. Right now they are together. Will they stay that way? I don't know. In fact, there's a line very, like in this part of the episode where Bo-Katan tells Din, like, I don't know if I can keep everyone together. And also, as you pointed out, there's this whole fight between Paz Vizsla and Axe Woves. And so, yeah, like, they are working together right now, but I think it remains to be seen if it will last or if it won't.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like, just looking, like, I'm pretty convinced at this point that, like, this is just what's happening. I don't think there's, like, some kind of, like, MJF scheming happening here where, like, they're, pretending to be someone that they're not so that they can, like, turn at the last second, because, like, I don't think that, like, they have more to gain from this alliance than, like, whatever they could gain by turning. And so I don't see a point in them, like, why they would want to, like, turn on everyone and, be, really dig their heels in and then just, like, go back to, like, living in a shitty cave. Like,
but this is I think potentially another example of one of the things we were talking about earlier, which is that not everybody in a group thinks the same way or believes the same things or is the same. So, like previously throughout this show, Din Djarin has been relatively unquestioning of the way, and like I just have to get to those waters so that I can redeem myself, because once I'm redeemed, then like, oh my God, to me, we talked about it earlier in the season. I was like, you don't have to redeem yourself for anything. Why do you have to redeem yourself? You know what I mean? And now at this point, it seems like potentially they've changed their mind, and like he didn't need to. It would have been okay. You know what I mean? You didn't have to like go on some potentially life-ending mission to step foot into these waters to redeem yourself, because if you didn't, you're a piece of shit, Din. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't seem to be the current perspective. But anyways, what I was trying to say is that like even with the Imperials, Moff Gideon's a true believer. You know what I mean? Moff Gideon is like, or maybe true believer is not the right way to put it, but Moff Gideon is entrenched. Elia Kane is entrenched. There's no changing for them. I think the show has made it clear there's no changing for them. Jack Black changed. Dr. Pershing could have changed, but he was kind of manipulated or whatever. But he was like, he could have changed, right? And anyways, I think there's been a lot of shots of people like Axe Woves and Casca Reeves and others, or Paz Vizsla or whoever on the other side of it, when these leaders are speaking, they will cut to, and of course they would, but they'll cut to those characters kind of looking at those statements, looking at those leaders, and sort of like, I feel like it's inviting us to question, like, what do they think about this? What does Axe Wolves think about, Bo-Katan saying this? Or what does Paz Vizsla think about the armor saying, go ahead, Bo, take your helmet off, whatever. So anyways, long story short, I don't expect like all of a sudden all of the children of the Watch to be like, just kidding, we hate you guys, you know what I mean? Like to be whatever. But I could see the armorer all this time potentially thinking a couple steps ahead. Let's use another wrestling phrase. I've probably used it before. You brought up MJF earlier. It could be that a lot of these people are playing checkers, Ryan, but the armorer is playing chess. You know what I mean? She might be playing chess when they're all playing checkers. She might be looking a couple steps down the line and already thinking, like, what am I going to do here, here, and here, Or maybe not. Maybe I'm just, like, being too skeptical of her, and she's just really had a great change of heart. I don't know. But
yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see. Part of it is also, like, projecting something I've mentioned, before, that, like, I don't want all of this just to be happening so that, like, we just have, like, a big fight scene against Mandalorians flying around on their jetpacks and, like, beating the crap out of each other just because it will, like, look cool or whatever. But
we can already get that now because we have the Death Troopers with jetpacks.
Yeah. So I think I think like that was something I was kind of like afraid of when we saw like those early trailers and stuff where I was like pretty convinced that was going to happen. I was like, this is going to be like the dumbest season of television ever. But no, like I feel like they're exploring these things in like a deeper and more thoughtful way. That's not what's going to happen. But I think there can be like maybe what you were saying is like some interpersonal conflict with a few characters, because there is like this sliding scale of like belief systems that's happening, and not everyone is like completely in the same spot. So yeah, and like I do feel like there is like some degree of conflict that is inevitable, and that will, we only have one episode left of this season, and I mean, one episode could completely, upend the tea table and like flip everything that we kind of thought was happening. So it's like, it's hard to say, where things could be going beyond this. But yeah, I think there's certainly the possibility, but I also think the greater threat has been established at this point, so I don't think that's as much of a concern on like a macro story level.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think I don't think it would be, if the armor is really playing chess, I don't think it would make much sense to like try to usurp, Bo-Katan now, because as you said, there's this greater threat, right? And like, why bring your people together for 5 minutes just to like undo it, right away? So I think if there is something brewing here, it would be further down the line. But even if there's not anything like that brewing, as you said, interpersonal conflicts, like there's still going to be difficulties with these different factions kind of living together. And Bo-Katan says something to the group at some point, like about how, all of us factions fighting, each other is what makes us weak or whatever. Like we can't do that, so we'll see. I think she actually has been like, there was a couple of different moments where I was like, she's really showing good leadership in this episode. And I feel like she's they're establishing her as the right person. And they have been, but I felt like there was moments here where they were really establishing her as the right person to lead the Mandalorians. There's that moment where she's talking to those surviving night owls, and they say like, oh, this happened. I forget what it is, but whatever series of events that led to our defeat. And she's like, that's not true. Like, I surrendered to Moff Gideon.
Yeah.
She's being honest about what happened during the Night of a Thousand Tears or around surrounding that situation. And they accept that. Like, she says that, and nobody, I think that's good leadership. I think like her just being willing to be honest in that moment and tell the truth. That's like, she passed a test there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there's a conversation between her and Din later where she's like, I don't know if I can keep everyone together. I don't know, like, about all, like, if I'm going to be able to be successful. And he pretty much tells her, like, I didn't even really know anything about the Darksaber until you guys told me about it. And, like, that does not matter to me. And he tells her what matters to him is honor and character. And he lists a couple of other qualities as well. Yeah. And tells her your song is not yet written. And he also tells her, I will serve you. I don't know if he says I'll serve you until it is, like until the song is written, but I'll serve you to the end, or I'll serve you something. I will serve you, whatever. So that was another really nice moment. And I think another way that the show was saying, like, to us as the audience, like, no, she is legit, like, the right person to lead these people.
Yeah. Like the guy that you like, he vouches for her. Like,
yeah, the guy that you're making all the TikToks about and all the memes and stuff. Yeah.
Your space daddy vouches. So.
Right, but let's get that helmet off of him and let them gaze into each other's eyes a little bit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if that's happening. I don't know if that's what's going on. I think some people are reading that. Maybe you're reading that. I'm not really reading that.
But... Oh, you don't ship them, is what you're saying?
No.
Oh, okay. I do, but I thought maybe you meant like Din's helmet isn't coming off either. Eventually. Which,
I mean, who's to say? Like,
yeah. I say it is, but the only reason I say it, the primary reason I say it is because I don't want to see Grogu under a helmet for the rest of his life, And so I think for Din to maintain that, I guess, hey, dad can do it and baby not, I guess. But for Din to continue to wholeheartedly believe in this part of the way that is, I never show my face to anyone else, he would want his son to, be part of that same doctrine, right? And that doesn't seem like the right way to go for me, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, I think that's a cross that bridge when we get to it thing. I don't think that's the most pressing story beat right now. Because I think, again, like, Grogu is, like, still a baby at, like, this point. And, like, he's slowly growing up. But, like, I don't think we're at the point where it's like, well, it's time for... communion or whatever.
Well,
like,
I would clarify one that I don't expect. I'm not saying like it's going to happen in the next episode, like that Din's going to have to take his helmet off, or Grogu's going to have to put a helmet on or whatever. But I would also point out that just a couple episodes ago, Din was like, hey, Grogu, stop playing with crabs on the beach. You got to come over here and spar with this kid.
Yeah.
And that kid had just got done going through that process of like putting the helmet on. Like that had just happened with that kid. And so, and Din says, like, if you're ever going to go from being a foundling to a whatever the next thing is, you have to do this. So to me, Din is talking about it like Grogu's getting close to the point where he's ready to move to the next step. So I think you're right that it's not an immediate concern, but I do think it is on the horizon as a conflict or something that needs to be resolved. Yeah. So anyway,
I also got some of my religious terminology mixed up there. I said communion. I meant confirmation.
Yes. Yeah. True.
But,
okay. Well, yep. We'll see in future seasons. Probably. I wonder how many more seasons there are. I know that that he's written the fourth one, or he's writing the fourth one. But the more I hear about this Dave Filoni movie, the more it seems like that could be the end of But we talked about it, I guess, on the last episode too.
I mean, who even knows? Like, I think that's what's really exciting to me about this show is like it has just become so unpredictable that, you know, even with like information that we have, like it is impossible. Because like literally, think of where we were at the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian. We're like, oh, the next season is going to be Grogu training and Din's going to be off on his own again. And, you know, trying to, like, reconcile these things. Like, that's what we thought when, like, season 2 ended.
But I think part of that, you're right, yeah. But part of that conversation the whole time, too, was, like, can they really do a show where Din and Grogu aren't together? I mean, I think we also kind of thought, like, maybe they're not going to do that because it seems hard to believe they would do that, you know, which turns out, no, they won't do that. They won't do that. So, yeah.
But, I mean, I couldn't have predicted this season. Like, no way. So,
That's true.
I mean, who even knows what's coming next? But
okay, yeah.
We should probably, like, wrap up how this episode ends and, like, what could maybe happen in the last episode of the season.
That's exactly right. Yes. So, Grogu, I just want to point out that Grogu stops the fight between the two, and I think that's another thing. Like you've got these. It's true. He uses the arms to hold them apart too. But I think you've got like, okay, here's my version of the way. Here's your version of the way, right? And then you have this third party who's saying like, guys, like, no, we don't have to like. You should not be fighting over this. You should not be pushing each other to believe things the way that you believe them or whatever, So I think there's something significant about the fact that it's Grogu who does that, because Grogu's the foundling, right? And Grogu's the young, more innocent, kind of member of this whole situation. And as much as he's like, I guess, one of the children of the Watch or whatever, not really, right? I mean, they've accepted him as one and he goes everywhere with them and everything, but it's not like he's really had the chance to be like necessarily deeply kind of process like, yes, I pledge myself to this. Like, I believe in this so much, like, man, helmet's on forever. Like, that's not where he is.
Yeah. And I mean, even beyond that, like, is he a Mandalorian or is he a Jedi? Like, then like he has a larger.
Yeah. Well, he did kind of make his choice.
He did for that moment.
Yeah.
He made the choice of a child, but like, I still.
But later on, he's going to have to choose to go to Rey's temple and train with her. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah.
No, probably, yeah.
I don't know, but because there's also like that conversation, the Jedi and the Mandalorians used to be close. Like there are a lot of plates spinning right now.
Yeah. Well, Bo-Katan tells Din Djarin, you taught your apprentice well when he does that. So I think that's another sign of her as a good leader. She's like, your kid's doing the right thing by stopping this, right? And not too long ago, it would have seemed like a moment like that. Like, for instance, on that space station in Book of Boba Fett, the armor and Din and Paz Vizsla, they all seem to think like damn near killing each other or potentially killing each other to decide who's, legit here or whatever, like, is the right thing to do. And then Bo-Katan's like, you know what? No, this is not the right thing to do. And she did say before that, she's like, hey, it was going to happen eventually. You got to let him work it out or whatever. But But like when Grogu stops him, she's like, you taught your apprentice well. And Din says, well, he didn't learn that from me, which I thought was an interesting line too. Who did he learn?
That is an interesting line.
I mean, I think of the Jedi, and specifically I think of Luke potentially even too. Did he learn that from Luke? And is that line, meant to indicate that maybe Grogu internalized or is more connected to that Jedi thing than, his choice in Book of Boba Fett may have led us to believe. So certainly some food for thought there, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk about these Beskar Imperial, the next generation of Dark Troopers. I mean, Beskar armored with jetpack, Moff Gideon approved, sort of troopers here.
Yep.
Well, first off, it turns out that Moff Gideon is real stinker, and he has, set up his own Imperial base, like right in the core, right in the heart of Mandalore.
Yeah.
That was a low move, that was a cheap shot, I feel like. But Moff Gideon's always been like, enamored with that Darksaber. There's always been this sense like, I want the cape, I want the Darksaber, and he seems to really feel like he's gonna not inherit Mandalore in the way that like, the armorer might want to, or Bo-Katan is right now, but like, yeah, I'm gonna destroy what it was, and then I'll be the new, kind of. I'm not a Mandalorian, but I'm gonna take Mandalore. I'm gonna take the Beskar. I'm gonna take the warrior kind of element of all this, and lead it myself as part of the Empire or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, there's a big action sequence here. Moff Gideon gets a big, like, villain speech and all of that. He tells, I don't know if he's talking to Din, or I think he's talking to Din in this moment, but he says, thank you for gathering all of these Mandalorians in one place. So it's really a low point for our heroes here, because it's like they went and walked right into a trap, and it's looking pretty rough for them.
Real penultimate episode business.
Yeah,
here.
That's true. What did you think of the Dark Troopers? Like, what's your take on the design, the concept of them, like watching them in this episode? What do you think? I
don't really have a strong feeling. It feels like one of those things like, like AT walkers or something that like just like randomly get updated, that we're like getting updated for like every movie, and it's like, here's something that's like familiar but different, threatening, but like also, it's not the most threatening thing in the world. I don't know.
There certainly is a corner of the Star Wars fandom that lives for, the different helmet changes and different versions of trooper stuff and all that, which I think is cool. I've never been super into that, or I can't tell you the difference between the different phases of clone troopers or whatever, but I think that's fun for people who can. But I think what's compelling about this to me, or really interesting to me, is like, what is this? Because as Gideon is giving his little villain speech there, he says that they're the next generation Dark Trooper, and he talks about how he talks about cloning, and he mentions how there's a piece of himself in them, and then he also mentions, he's like, everybody, every society has something to contribute. And I feel like the way this was written was really interesting, because it was vague enough that I couldn't tell, like, is he talking about his plans for the future, or is he talking about what he's already done? Because he's like, every society has something to contribute. He said, like, the Mandalorians, even the Jedi, and was insinuating that his goal is to take, either his goal or maybe what he's already done with these troopers is to take portions of, or take, qualities or whatever from all of those different societies and make like the ideal, I don't know, person, trooper, soldier, whatever, as a result. Because he mentions himself. He says, it sounded to me like he's already kind of like cloned himself into these troopers or something. I don't know. What did you make of all that? Or did you...
I don't know. It was hard, because it was just like, it was so villainy that like part of it is like, it's hard to like, it was so like kind of tropey that I wasn't really like thinking through the details of it, I guess. So I don't know. I mean, there's like some similarities to like Thrawn's portrayal in Rebels. I think was like kind of the only like real connection that I made, where and then kind of like thinking about like why is Mandalore like a strategic point for the new empire, and it's like, well, obviously like the Beskar, the mithril, the kyber crystals, whatever like you want to call it, whatever that resources, the oil, like whatever it is, like that I that was basically all I really thought of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Yeah. Maybe more to be revealed next week. It felt to me like he was saying my evil cloning plan is coming to fruition, and there's going to be, because he wants Grogu's blood, and he captures Din. So maybe although Din's, I don't know. Anyway, he's up to something for sure, but I thought it was kind of cool and evocative, the way he was talking about that stuff, but we'll have to see kind of where they go with it. Another example of Bo-Katan being a strong leader, I think, is that, they made the point earlier in the season, or not the season, earlier in the episode. Yeah, I negotiated with him, I surrendered to him, and then he double-crossed me. So then when, this battle is taking place, Gideon says, like, you just need to surrender or whatever. And at that point, like, all the Mandos just start, like, blasting at the door and at Gideon. And when they're doing that, Bo-Katan goes back and does a sweet Qui-Gon Jinn-esque move with the Darksaber and melts that blast door so they can escape out that way rather than surrendering. And to me, that was just very much like she's learned from her mistakes. She's not going to make the same mistake twice. She's making good decisions as a leader here, which is not even to say what she did before was wrong necessarily, but like it is to say that you can't trust this guy. Gideon, you can't trust him, and she knows that, and she's not going to make the mistake of trusting him again, Yeah. And then Paz Vizsla.
Yeah. R.I.P.
Sacrifices himself, Bo-Katan's like, we're not going to leave you behind. He's like, hey, this is the way. And he messes up some Dark Troopers, like a lot of them.
If you're going to go out, like that is the way to do it. Like, just tremendous, like multiple points where you're like, all right, this is over. Like, he's dead now. And then he's like, nope. And like just wails on dudes for another minute. Like, it was awesome. I was like,
I guess I hope for Gideon's sake that these Dark Troopers don't yet have all this cloning stuff going on in them, because they're no match for Paz Vizsla. Like, he takes out like 10 of them. So if that's the best he can come up with his cloning recipe or whatever, it's not that good.
And then it's the Praetorian Guards that do him in finally.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Which was awesome.
Which was cool. Yeah. I mean, R.I.P. But like, man, that's just really, really cool, and a really cool connection to my favorite scene in all of Star Wars. So.
Yeah, but my mind was racing on Wednesday morning as I was watching it, because I was thinking to myself, like, okay, so people use this pejoratively to talk about Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau and the way they make their Star Wars shows, but they say, like, sometimes, they just get all their toys out and, just play with all their Star Wars toys, and sometimes it's written that way or whatever, which I think sounds kind of cool. But I guess, like, the question is, did they just use Praetorian Guards because they could? They were like, well, we need something cool and badass here, so we'll bring Praetorian Guards in. Or is it some kind of, I mean, I've seen Snoke's and Vats, Ryan, and when I see Praetorian Guards, I don't think of Moff Gideon, I think of Snoke,
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not saying Snoke's going to pop up in the next episode, but like, I would hope that they're not just like, it was a cool design and they have like badass electro whips, is Praetorian Guards. Like, there's got to be more to it than that, right?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, this is connected to my favorite scene in all of Star Wars, the throne room scene in Last Jedi, like, which is, this is an explicit connection to, like, yeah, I love that scene, but also like that story. Like, yeah, I don't think it's just like a, hey, those guys are cool. Yeah, I think it's in the other. There are these other pieces. Like we have all the pieces like in a mess on the table, and like we don't know how to like as audience members, we don't know how to like put them together. But it's like, yep, the Praetorian Guard pieces, like it makes sense that they're on the table, and so is Project Necromancy, and so is Thrawn, and like all of these things. Like yeah, like this, it made sense to me. It's like, yep, this is real. This is happening.
Okay. All right. Before we go, why don't we talk about predictions for the finale? What are you hoping to see?
I don't even know. Like that's the thing about this show. It's become impossible to predict, and that's what's exciting and fun about it. I think that possibly this is the final stand of Moff Gideon. I do think we are kind of bringing in Thrawn as like the next big bad of the show, and I don't like that. Doesn't feel like it would be surprising. I mean, maybe Moff Gideon will, get away with his tail between his legs kind of thing, and team up with Thrawn or whatever, or have a Kylo Hux or Krennic Tarkin type relationship, whatever. But I think his character as like the big bad of this series, I feel like this is the end. But I also because the threat is like obviously high in this penultimate episode, but it also doesn't seem like, whoa, how there's no possible way they're going to like overcome these odds, kind of thing. I don't know.
Well,
like
I think
a fully united Mandalorian front, but who knows? It could, like, Mandalorians could get crushed, and then who even knows?
Yeah. It's interesting. I think what you say about Moff Gideon makes a lot of sense. I don't see him working with Thrawn based on the things he was saying in this episode. We know that Thrawn will be a critical part of Ahsoka, which is the next show up. So whatever happens in Ahsoka will reverberate out to Mandalorian Season 4. I think we could even see Thrawn in this final episode, although I don't know for sure, but that could certainly be... Like, I thought it was really cool how... Like last weekend at Star Wars Celebration, they revealed that Thrawn was going to be in Ahsoka, even though we knew it, but they really revealed it, and they revealed that he was being played by Lars Mikkelsen and all that. And then like 4 days later, you have reference to Thrawn in this very next episode of The Mandalorian. In fact, a lot of people at Star Wars Celebration saw this episode of Mandalorian there. So it was like, the reveal of Thrawn being in Ahsoka and the reveal of Thrawn as a character in Mandalorian kind of happened concurrently. And so anyway, I wouldn't be surprised if that was all like, well, we could hold on to the Thrawn thing, but we can't because he's in the last episode of The Mandalorian. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't be surprised if he's in it at all. And you say like, well, it seems like the Mandos could defeat these Imperials here because they're full strength and all that, and maybe they could. But what if Thrawn shows up with a bunch more resources and then does crush the Mandalorians at that point? That seems like a possibility as well. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I also don't know. Like, I guess it was implied or it was kind of communicated that only a small group of them came down to the surface, and like a lot of them are still up with the fleet. So they should still be pretty strong if they come back down, or when they come back down to battle these guys or whatever. So yeah, maybe they would have the ability to defeat the Empire there. But I also wondered, could the New Republic show up and assist? Because you had Carson Teva earlier, and in the whole kind of conflict with will they, won't they help, and the I feel like the New Republic has really taken its licks this season of Mandalorian. Like, it has not been presented as being super great, as you talked about earlier. But so if they did the run-in and they helped save the Mandos at the end of this season, that would go a long way, maybe, towards making them seem a little more successful, heroic, moral, whatever.
Yeah.
Just a possibility.
I'm just picturing, by God, that's the New Republic's music. It's like a run-in.
JR commenting on the commentating. That would be great.
Yeah.
Who is it? Oh my God!
The lights all go out.
Yeah.
The New Republic is just behind Moff Gideon.
Yeah. That'd be sweet. It's a possibility. I don't know.
Yeah.
And then of course, like, I think obviously Din is going to be rescued by the end of the episode, but I'm curious how Grogu will factor into all of it. There's a lot of powerful emotions there, right? With Daddy being captured by the bad guy that captured me at the end of the last season, and we haven't really seen him. We saw him, kind of handle that cave monster. Other than that, we haven't seen Grogu doing too much impressive stuff this season. So I think he's due for wrecking some dudes in the finale too.
In the mech suit.
Yeah. Yep. And with the Force. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah.
So. All right, cool. Well, I am excited to see what we get on Wednesday. And we'll of course be back to discuss that next week. So
it's also
call it a day
so
here, Ryan.
Wild that the season's just going to be over.
It's come and gone pretty quickly. Yeah.
And then it's going to be like another 2 years or whatever for. But I think like threads will be continued in Ahsoka and whatever, and Skeleton Crew. So I don't think we'll be like fully out of the story, but like this particular branch of the story is just going to be over for a while.
Yeah. I wonder when season 4 will release. I don't know if they're like potentially they could be shooting it soon, or maybe not. I'm not sure what the word is on that.
Another, what's been going on with Boba Fett? Maybe there'll be another stinger in the post credits. Sequence.
Could be
the next book.
Right. Could
Another
be.
book.
Yep. All right, cool. We'll wrap it up here and anxiously await the season finale of The Mandalorian. Until then, you can find all of our previous shows at blockaderunnerpodcast.com. And if you want to weigh in with your thoughts on season 3 of The Mandalorian, you can email the show, blockaderunnerpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow the show on Twitter at blockaderun, or you can follow Ryan on Twitter at
Viamalay, VAYAMALAY, or Standard Definition Gaming, Def Stan 480.
And you can join our Discord, be part of the conversation there, and share your thoughts on Mandalorian Season 3 and any other Star Wars topics there. So the link to our Discord will be in the show notes and is on our blog as well. So our website, our blog. It's not really a blog. Yeah, it's weird.
Blog?
I mean, yeah. Pogs. That'd be a cool. If we had gone to Star Wars Celebration, what if we had made Pogs, and then we'd printed the Discord link on the Pogs?
Japan 2025.
Yes. Yeah. I think more and more likely that you'll be taking the Pogs to Japan, Ryan.
I will carry
more so than me. Yeah.
Burden. I will carry the Pogs and the Spiders all the way.
Oh my God. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, we're going to wrap up there. So thanks very much for listening, and we'll be back soon with another episode of the Blockade Runner podcast.